Hey everybody, welcome back to Friday Live with Matt and Tim, or as our friends like to call us, Mutt and Jeff. But we got a lot to talk about. We're going to jump into Romans, start to say Hebrews. We're not in Hebrews. We're in Romans chapter 12. Get down into some nitty gritty of some stuff. Got lots of announcements, lots of stuff going on. So stay with us. Jump online. Don't forget to comment and like in the comments in the section, in the comment section. What am I trying to say? Comment in the comment section. And stay with us as we talk about Romans 12. We'll be right back. Hey, folks. Welcome back. Hey, Riley, it's good for you to join us. If somebody else is out there, be sure to comment that you're watching. We like to see. I'll try to keep up with it, see who's watching. But we're going to jump into Romans 12. But before we do, a couple of pretty exciting things coming down the pipe. Next Saturday on the 26th?
Next Saturday.
Next Saturday, week from tomorrow, there's a pastors conference at Cross Brand Cowboy Church in Lindale, and Dr. Tony Evans from Oak Cliff Bible Fellowship is going to be the keynote speaker. Crucibles Fire is going to be setting up a vendor booth there, and we'll be just sharing a vision of our ministry with people, and trying to build some partnerships and just get the word out of what we're doing. And part of what we're doing, we've been telling you, we're developing an app to distribute right now down into Mexico, the Rio Grande Valley, Costa Rica. Actually, Costa Rica is probably going to be at the top of the list. They're ready for it to help us take our Bible study training down into the leaders and pastors down there. Maybe we'll get to do a survey trip down there towards the end of the year. Hello, Miss Ramos. Nice to see you. Thanks for joining us. But next month, actually March, we always have and have had ever since we started this ministry, we do March Madness Bible giveaway. And I think last year we gave away 350 Bibles, and it was a pretty good year. We're going to do something a little different this year, because our goal this year as a ministry is to get the app out and get these materials. And so we're going to be doing something a little different, which is we're going to be asking you to sponsor a pastor for March Madness Bible giveaway. And what that is for $40, we can supply a pastor with a Spanish, a digital Spanish Bible with Strong's and a Vine's expository dictionary that we use in our Bible study training. It takes $40 for a pastor. When we went to Mexico to take the paper Bibles, it's about $130 a pastor. If we do it digitally, we can do it for $40. So that's coming up next month. You'll be seeing more of me probably online, doing some extra lives and seeing some things. So keep up with that for March Madness Bible giveaway, giving the digital Bibles to the pastors down in the valley and down through Central America. The other thing that we got going on, April 23rd, that's coming up. I want you to save the date. That's a couple of months away. But here at the Bridge Fellowship Church, here in Martins Mill, Tim and I are going to be teaching a Kingdom Vision class. Do you want to say anything about that? Put you on the spot.
Yeah, you're putting me on the spot. Keep going.
I'll keep going. I'll come back. We'll come back to Tim after these messages. But really, we're going to be starting at 9 o'clock on Saturday, April the 23rd. We'll go through 4 o'clock-ish whenever we get finished. We'll provide lunch. You don't have to worry about that. But just come with a Bible and a notebook and a pen and an attitude to learn. We're just going to be talking about seeing the world as he sees it. I mean, being able to see the kingdom at work in the world and be able to separate the natural and see how the kingdom works in things.
Well, and that can seem kind of presumptive a little bit when you start telling people, well, we're going to show you how God looks at things.
Fair enough.
And so, well, I'm not saying it's what you did. I'm just saying that, in essence, that's what we're going to do. But it's working through it, not how Tim and Matt tell you how God does it. It's the Spirit working and kind of a working relationship with everybody in the room, so to speak, to be able to look at the scriptures and be able to come with good interpretations of what that looks like. So, and really equip you to be able to start learning how the Lord's looking at things. It's not how you look at it; it's how He looks at it, and that's kind of the matrix of it.
Keep talking, young man.
Oh, well, we're having technically difficulties over here that you can't see.
I've only done this
So
1,000 times. Is that a little better over there, Sean, audio-wise? I got a
Yeah.
thumbs up. But and you know, even on that note though of one of the things we're going to talk about today in Romans 12 is people have this tendency to think, well, this is what the Bible says, and here's this checklist of stuff,
yeah,
and I got to do all this stuff to be just right. And we want to encourage you as we get through Romans 12 not to do that.
that's kind of in the start of it.
Yeah. But this Kingdom Vision class, workshop, men's event, conference, whatever you want to call it.
Well, and really, it's not going to be a one-day deal. So we're doing it.
Right.
We're doing it in April, and we're going to have
one towards the end of the summer.
And then another one. So in this year,
Yeah.
we'll have 3 of those.
Exactly. There'll be 3 of those, and they'll build on each other
Yeah.
and have kind of a crescendo towards the end of the year. But one of the things that we do like to discuss, and that you'll see, is that it's there's not a formula.
Yeah.
It's more of an approach to life and approach to the kingdom. I'm trying to get back on here where I can see who's watching, which may be anybody. Hey, Riley. Looks like Riley and Jill's still with us. Thank you, guys. Romans 12. We went through verse 8 last week. And
Yeah.
but to really, we got to bridge. We kind of want to go back to Romans 1 and 2, or Romans 12, 1 and 2. That's really where Paul makes the shift. Romans 11, we were talking about the olive trees and Gentiles and Jews and who is and who isn't, da 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 da. And he's making this shift. Okay, so if you're in the tree, if you're on the cultivated tree, you're in the kingdom, you're a follower of God. He kind of makes this shift into, so what does that look like? It's it is practical, but it's not. My words are failing me. It's not a checklist to make sure you do these things.
It's not a checklist, but look at it in the context of the whole book. So he starts out talking about how the kingdom kind of deals with things,
Mm-hmm.
how he dealt with the redemption issue, how that worked from God's perspective, how the only way it could have been fixed. And then he kind of starts talking about the Jews and the Gentiles, because there was arguments about that kind of stuff where he was at.
Right.
And we're real Christians because, one, we're Jews and we believe in Jesus. And then, Rome, we think our culture's all jacked up now.
Right.
You hadn't seen anything. And so those Gentiles that were in there were coming in and being a part. And so there was this discussion. And so he settles that with how a just God deals with things, just not as in I'm going to crush you, but just as in he is the same from the beginning to the end.
Right.
And then we switched off into, and 12 is kind of the beginning of it. And this is what everybody, I think, associates Christianity by.
Mm.
We don't do rules and regulations, but we do rules and regulations.
Right.
And so this is where we start talking about what looks like and could be conceived as rule and regulation. And you got to remember that other stuff first as we start getting into this. But it is kind of a guide, so to speak, of how you walk and talk and act and be relative to a mindset that came from the first part of the book.
Well, there's this tension between, and I'll work it backwards. A lot of times we think that I got to do all of these things in order to be right with God.
But it's my coffee.
Sorry. And where there is an element of truth in that, but I want to flip it. That being right with God first and foremost means it's all up to it's his deal.
Yeah.
He's right with you more than you're right with him.
Yes.
And when that's
that
true,
was good. Say that again.
He's right with you instead of you getting right with him.
Yes.
Just like when you said the other day when you were teaching at church that he created us to be a part of us. He didn't just create us to just see what would happen. We're not like...
Yeah, we're not some entity floating around that he hopes comes to his direction.
You remember those little things? I think they were actually like little shrimps that you used to could buy, and you put them in little water and they'd like grow.
Sea monkeys?
Sea monkeys, that was it. Little sea monkeys. We're not his sea monkeys. Don't shake the camera. A lot of people think that God created humanity just to be like sea monkeys.
Good.
That's not what... I'm going to put that on the deal. We are not God's divine sea monkeys. But
oh, man.
But it's true. Now, being in the cultivated tree, being justified by God, being called by God, being glorified by God, brings about in us a lifestyle.
Yes.
And because we're still broken, because we're still in these broken cisterns, yes, we have to fight against the flesh and make choices to pursue the things of the kingdom.
But we're talking about saved people here.
Right.
We're not talking
Right.
about getting saved or anything. This is the people that are saved by the blood of Jesus Christ, has confessed his name with their mouth and believed in their heart that God raised him from the dead, and they're saved.
Right.
That's the redemptive part, that you don't do anything for that. God visits you, you respond. Poof, that's about what it is. Now we're talking about what that looks like as we begin to look more like a kingdom person, if you want to call it that.
Right.
Well, because that's where we're getting into.
And I want to make a distinction, and I've been telling this more and more in the last couple of years, but I'm seeing it more and more. Within the church community, and I don't mean our church, I mean like the body of Christ community, within saved people that I run into, I'm distinctly see and experience two distinct sets of people with varying degrees. And push back on this if you think this is too simple. But I get around, and I always call them kind of the group A, and I believe that they are believers. They've trusted the Lord. He has operated in their heart. But they're very earthly focused, very physically focused. I call them, they're good churchmen. They're not evil people. They're doing good things. And it's just an okay experience. But then there's this other group of people that I continually bump into, and they're spirit-filled. They're also doing good works or whatever, in response to their salvation. But there's a desire for the kingdom that transcends all the house of God stuff like you talked about on Sunday. Very distinct. And what I found in my background growing up was there was a lot of focus on the house of God. I would say this group is the house of God group, and this is the face of God group.
So you're not talking to like people that are secular Christians. You're talking about practicing Christians, but there's two different.
Yes.
Okay.
Where your focus is on the house of God things, and everything becomes a checklist.
In a bad way.
In a bad way, versus the face of God, where there still may be items and things that you could probably put them on a list if you just had to. But the goal is not the list.
Yes.
The list is not the end game. Looking into the face of God is the end game. And I say that because as we go in through Romans 12, as we're stepping through this, don't make checking off the items in Romans 12 the end game.
I think that's kind of a natural way to do it, though. Our linear natures.
Well, right.
And so I guess what we're doing is we're trying to tell you it says, well, we'll read some of this, and it seems pretty clear. Do this, do this, do this. And, of course, we get that, and we go, okay, do this, and do it that way. And the thing to look at it is, especially in light of Romans 1 and 2, Romans 12, verse 1 and 2, is that when you look at that, learn to try to ponder on it to how is God doing this? I know how I'm taking it. Is there a different way to take it? How do I look at that? Not looking at it from different people's perspectives, but see, I'm dumb enough to believe that you're spirit-filled, and that is 100% of who God is. It's not like he's split up and can be in, I can help you right here and now, but my wife may need something over at the house, but I can't get to her because I can only be in one place at once. Maybe a phone call I can help with something, maybe in kind of sort of two places at once.
It's a limited attention.
It's a limited capability.
Right.
And that's not what you get with God.
Right.
He's 100% with my wife and her right there as he is with me right here and you right there.
Right.
And with that said, he's not slack in what he does. And he teaches in his time. And we've been seeing that throughout the book, I think. And so as we look at these things to do and things to be, that's working out our salvation with fear and trembling. That's Hebrews. Is that where it says that? And the point of it is, it's all theoretical. I know we're ready to read the word here. But looking at it from that perspective, it's not as black and white as it seems. Sometimes it is. But you want God to show you the black and white part.
Right.
Not Matt preaching it and telling you this is where it's at. Even if he says, this is it.
Exactly.
It's okay. Take it.
Well said.
But be like Mary and ponder it in your heart for a while and let the Lord show you where it's at. I mean that.
Yeah.
She's a big mentor to me over that.
Well,
That's a big load on her.
And simultaneously resist the urge to go, but what does this mean to me? Take what it means, period.
Don't gaff it off.
Yeah, don't gaff it off, and don't be like, oh, no, that's good for these people, but not me. It's good for all of us.
I don't like to be in tension. Well,
you have to be.
The Lord works that out too.
And so we went through verse 8 last week, and we'll not rehash all of that again. But at the end, verses 6, 7, and 8, he's kind of going through, if you've got this particular gift, use it as it was intended. I mean, this is not an all-exhaustive list. And I guess that's part of the reason I push so heavy on that is like, oh, well, he didn't list this gift in Romans chapter 12, so it's not as important. That's not the point.
Yes.
He's just giving examples and saying, if you're going to do service, use it in service. If your gift is teaching, then do it in teaching. I mean, just in other words, use your stinking gifts. And in verse 9, where we kind of left off, and I think it's kind of an unnatural break between 8 and 9 for what it's worth. And he says, let love be without hypocrisy. Detest evil and cling to that which is good. And what you're going to find structure-wise in Romans 12, 9 through the end, is just going to you'll notice lots of semicolons. And if we were breaking this down through our, doing our textual breakdown, hello, Miss Croft, you would see that we would just have thought after thought after thought after thought after thought. They're almost disconnected, seeming. Yeah. And he's just, it's like he's rapid fire. Boom, 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 boom. Let love be without hypocrisy. In other words, don't be a hypocrite. I mean, this is really pretty simple stuff because the idea is to reflect the nature of God. And how do you love without hypocrisy? What in the world does that even mean? How do you love with hypocrisy? What does that look like? You got any thoughts on that? What does it mean to love with? A lot of times I can explain what something is better in my mind by looking at the opposite. We all know what a hypocrite is.
Well, here's the New Living Translation of that. Don't just pretend to love others, really love them.
Yeah.
That seems like a big bridge to gap, but a big gap to bridge. Well, I don't love Matt. He irritates me all the time. He's a partner. He's a church friend. I think there's a way to learn that, but you have to implement it now.
Yeah.
And what that means is if I'm dealing with somebody, and it's not always a love-hate thing, you may just go wherever you go and look at somebody in your mind going, do I love them? Well, God loves them.
Yeah. I
mean, in a deep way. We kind of read some of that in the beginning chapters of Romans, which was the whole reason for the redemption. And so it's a purposeless function or purposeful function. I don't know what it means. And you're talking to yourself like in your head, and you're going, I don't know what it means to love him, but I love him because God tells me I need to, and I'm going to.
Right.
And if that's what it takes in the beginning, that's what you do.
Well, and our culture has decided that love is this weird emotion that hits you out of nowhere.
Lord, yeah.
I heard a pastor say, it may have been Matt Chandler, I don't remember. He's like, the most terrifying thing in the world, we're out off of Valentine's Day, would be if love really was like Cupid. Like it could just shoot you and hit you and you fell madly in love with somebody, you had no control over it. And because if that's the case, you could be married to your spouse, be in love with them, and then, you really do get hit by love for somebody else, and you're now obligated to leave that relationship and go to this one. That's a terrifying existence, and it's not real. But love is action, and love is doing. There was an old song, love is a verb, and it really is. How do I love somebody? I serve them. I care about them. It's intentional.
Yeah.
And it's getting up every morning. We do it with our spouses, folks, all the time. I've been married 27 years come April the 2nd this year. And that's a long time. We've been together for a long time. But my wife will tell you, every day, we don't wake up every day and look at each other with hearts and bows and everything. There are some days it's like, I'm mad at this person and they've irritated me. But you make a choice
to go in and you have compassion, you have care, you have concern, you serve them, you provide for them, and we're going to talk about that more as we get down into this, what that looks like. But I wanted to lay that foundation that love is doing, even if it's an intentional, internal flipping the switch of I'm not going to hate them, I'm not going to give them vitriol, I'm going to give them sweetness, kindness, or whatever. It's an intentional walkthrough, and that's what it means to me about don't do it with hypocrisy.
Well, but hypocrisy means that it's fake.
Yeah, don't be fake.
But it may feel fake though.
Right, that's fair.
That's what I'm trying to tell you. It's fake if you're doing it.
Right, let the Spirit.
Well, I'm going to look like I'm loving you and all that. But if you believe that God is who he says he is, and you believe that he is a part of you, and he's telling you here, love these people.
Right.
And he's not just talking about saved Christians. He's talking about all of the creation people.
Yeah.
So when you look at them, you got to look at them as a creation of the Lord, even though they're despicable in what they do or whatever. And that's the point. That's what before we get going here, I want to read Romans 1 and 2 again.
12:1 and 2.
12:1 and 2. Read this one.
You got the New Living?
I do. And there's nothing wrong with the New American Standard, but it's a little disjointed sometimes. And so, dear brothers and sisters, I plead with you to give your bodies to God because of all he has done for you. Let your bodies be a living and holy sacrifice, the kind he will find acceptable. That takes his vision for you to even grab a hold of that, and that's learned. This is truly the way to worship him. Don't copy the behavior and customs of the world, but let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think. Then you will learn to know God's will for you, which is good and pleasant, pleasing and perfect.
Right.
So that there is going to be some tension there between, frankly, we're all so secular in how we do things, and secular doesn't mean evil. You can have a really good moral demeanor,
but it doesn't mean it's
and
kingdom.
Be secular. It doesn't mean it's kingdom.
Right.
And so that full Spirit of God that's within us, that's working out. And we read this stuff and you can go, well, I know that's not what I'm doing. Like, let love be without hypocrisy. So that's what I'm saying. Switch it. Don't go, well, I got to love this guy. No, the Lord loves him. As that creation, you got to respect that. That's how you keep from being hypocritical.
Yeah, and we don't have time, but Corrie ten Boom talks about that in her memoirs. About coming face to face with one of the guards at the concentration camp.
Yeah.
And we don't have time.
Yeah.
We're at 12:20 and we've gotten through one phrase. So, detest evil and cling to that which is good. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on some of these because what I want us all
to just read down through 13 because then okay.
So detest evil, cling to that which is good, love one another deeply as brothers and sisters, take the lead in honoring one another. Do not lack diligence and zeal, be fervent in the spirit and serve the Lord. Rejoice in hope, be patient in affliction, be persistent in prayer. Share with the saints in their needs, pursue hospitality.
And these are things that you do.
Right.
As a saved Christian. We get caught between this, all we're here for is to bring people to the knowledge of the Lord as in salvation. And that does get kind of messed up. And so I'm not rejecting that part. What I'm saying here is just as he read, these are things that it's called for you to do. That means that it's in you if the Spirit of the Lord is in you.
Exactly.
And so that means it's time to start digging and finding. This is not the only place this happens.
Right.
The first part of 2 Peter, man, Peter just lays it out. The same thing. I love that.
Yeah.
The way he did it. You have to understand the preface before you get to how he lays it out, because he's not going, you bunch of idiots, you need to do this, this, and this. That's not how he's giving it.
Right.
Ephesians, the whole chapter of Ephesians chapter 5 talks about living like God wants you to live.
Exactly.
So anyway,
well, and part of what we got to remember as we're going through Romans 12 is we're still broken. Yeah. We're not. We're going to talk about this on April 23rd about the already not yet nature of the kingdom. The kingdom of heaven is at hand. It's here, but there's also more glorification to become. Sanctification takes a lifetime. It'll not be finished until we're finished, until we're with Him. And so I call these just they're like markers, they're like flags. If you find yourself being lazy, look at verse 11. If you find yourself being lazy in your study, lazy in your attitude and pursuit towards the kingdom, he says don't do that. Don't lack diligence. You kick yourself in the tail end and get up and get to work.
Yeah, make yourself do it.
Make yourself do it because it's good and honoring.
Well, we do it in other things too.
Yeah.
If you work out all the time, there's people, they hate getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning going around, but they'll do it. Well, I know that we don't, but I'm just talking about whatever you will have diligence in.
Yeah.
That's not really an option.
Well, even going to work. I mean, we make jokes about it all the time. People can get up and be at work at 7 o'clock, like clockwork, but you can't get them at church by 10. And we ha ha ha. But there's actually some double-edged truth in that. Like, well, we're getting paid to get up and go to work.
Yeah, because it attributes to your livelihood here and now. Yeah. And that's the transition. You got to understand the other is the livelihood.
That's exactly right. And, if you think you can't live without money, try living without the Spirit. And, and some of you will remember whoever you were BC, before Christ, you don't want to go back to that. And not living with that fellowship and that power of what it comes from just being around other believers. And it's not about church attendance. It's about the fueling of the Spirit and the being around people of like mind and those sorts of things. But you sometimes just got to pick yourself up and do the things that your flesh doesn't want to do, because you know that they are in tune and in line with what the kingdom is doing. Go ahead.
Let's read the rest of the chapter here.
And then chat.
Because it goes with, and the reason is because what we were talking about earlier. So this chapter goes into specifics, things that are on you.
Gotcha.
And
do you want to read or me too?
Well, we'll read it, but here's what I'm saying. So if there's something specific in this that hits you and you might go, could you talk about that more?
Yeah, put a comment.
Send us something. We may not be able to, maybe we don't do it today, but we'll know and we'll come back and we'll deal with that maybe next week or something.
I'm watching. I'll see if you got something
so
that hits you.
I'm going to start in verse 9 and read it and go down through the end. Let love be without hypocrisy. Abhor what is evil. Cling to what is good. Be devoted to one another in brotherly love. Give preference to one another in honor. Not lagging behind in diligence. Fervent in spirit. Serving the Lord. Rejoicing in hope. Persevering in tribulation, be devoted to prayer, contributing to the needs of the saints, practicing hospitality. Verse 14, bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse. Rejoice with those who rejoice. Weep with those who weep. Sorry. Be of the same mind toward one another. Do not be haughty in mind, but associate with the lowly. Do not be wise in your own estimation. Never pay back evil for evil to anyone. Respect what is right in the sight of all men. If possible, so far as it depends on you, be at peace with all men. Never take your own revenge, beloved, but leave room for the wrath of God, for it is written, vengeance is mine, and I will repay, says the Lord. But if your enemy is hungry, feed him, and if he is thirsty, give him drink. For in doing so, you will heap burning coals on his head. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good.
There's a lot in that.
Well, but the reason these things are specific, Paul wasn't going, well, I think we ought to be like this, that, and the other. This is how God is. And when you look through all of biblical history, that's exactly what he does.
Yeah. So Romans 12 is less a checklist of here's the things you got to make sure you're doing, and it's more of an outlined encouragement. You need to reflect the nature and the character of God like this.
Well, this is how like his a creed. So in the military, all these different type units have a creed,
Right.
This is who I am, this is what I do. And there's actually an Apostles' Creed. And I would actually encourage you to look that up, the Apostles' Creed. It's all over the place. And just read that. And the point is you'll read it and you'll go, I agree with everything that's here, but I know I'm not that, or that.
Right.
Or I may be a little shaky here.
Right.
I want to believe that, but I don't really know. That's what this is.
Yeah.
And the point is, it is the God that created you, and he has implanted every bit of that in you
Right.
if you're saved.
Right.
And so, like Matt said, it's a check. It's kind of a guide, read the thing often and look at it. And you're not going to do good some days. You're going to do good on others. Some days you'll have, wow, I get it. I see it. And others, it may take you a long time to work that out. And he knows that.
Well, when I say resist the urge to see it as a checklist, resist the urge to go, oh, I missed one. I'm doomed.
And if you're a list taker, I get it, man.
I get it.
That's hard.
And the flip side of that, resist the urge to go, oh, I got all those. I'm good. Because tomorrow you probably won't.
Well, and if you also believe that God is who he is, he orchestrates your life.
Yeah.
And so about the time you think you're doing good, he may orchestrate some things in because he's developing it more than what it is.
Right.
If that makes sense.
No, he's pushing. He's always putting pressure.
He is always putting.
To bring us to a place. And I made the comment before we came on the podcast, like with verse 14, to bless those who persecute you, bless and do not curse. That in the very end of the text. Those are the kind of things that, and the statement I made was, is we as Christians tend to give ourselves a pass on doing this as long as it's politics, or as long as the person that we're being mean to is sufficiently evil.
Yeah.
And in the end, where the way it resonates with me, you think, well, how does this reflect the nature of God? The end of it says, if your enemy's hungry, feed him. If he's thirsty, give him something to drink. For in so doing, you'll heap fiery coals on his head. There's also a weird.
That's from an Old Testament passage, by the way.
It is. It's a quote. But I see Christians doing this too. I really have hatred in my heart for this person because of what they did to me or just who they are. But I'm going to be nice to them because that's going to be really mean to them. Like
you're purposely trying to make it so that it has coals on her head.
Yeah, that's not what it's talking about.
Yeah, right.
If you remember, when the angel brought the coal down and touched it to what's his name?
Oh, yeah. Isaiah.
Yeah. Total. Yeah. The whole point of the coals being touched was to cleanse the lip that was evil.
Yeah.
And so to give drink to the thirsty enemy, or to give food to the hungry enemy, is not to make sure that they get burned down by the coals. It's to help purify them that they may come to repentance.
Yes.
Here's a nasty little secret that nobody likes to talk about.
That was good.
In our heart of hearts, we don't want our enemies to repent. And we don't want evil people to repent and get better. We want them to get what they deserve and get burned down.
That's absent of the Spirit of the Lord.
That's absent of the Spirit of the Lord. But I see that a lot in Christian circles these days, too.
Well, it's human.
It's human.
It's human nature. Not pulling God out of it. We're Lord of the Flies. That's a whole nother discussion.
And that's why we've got to fight against that.
Well, but that's why he does it, right?
I agree.
The Spirit is within you. He's saying these are things of God, and they're completely opposite of things that I am without that.
Right.
And he's saying sacrifice that and let the Lord overcome it. Well, that's tough.
And the way you can tell that this is a reflection of who God is because don't forget the scriptures declare that we were once enemies of God. It says we were at enmity. While we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. So he didn't treat his enemies, us, like we treat our enemies as in the flesh. And this is a reminder that you're not reflecting the nature and the character of God by really deeply desiring that your enemies get what's coming to them. Because the truth of it is if any of us got what's coming to us, we would no longer exist. Period.
Yeah.
And no, that's actually not correct. We would exist, but we would be in eternal torment if we got what we deserved.
That's exactly right.
And so for me, the reminder is in Romans 12, how do I work this out in my life, is there are some people that I genuinely do not like. There are groups of people that I don't care for in my flesh and in maybe my intellect. The scriptures call me to a higher relationship with them, which is to genuinely have compassion for their soul. And when they persecute me, I'm supposed to be nice to them. It's right there.
But it's easy to come back to the thing I'm supposed to and I have to, and you hear yourself, I. Absent of the Spirit, that's true. So you may be trying to do it on your own.
Mm.
The humble thing is to go back and say, this is exactly how I feel, and I want to rip their face off. And it may feel that way, but then the whole context of this chapter and the ones before it were, but the Spirit of the Lord that dwells in me, and I know that He's there, that's what it means to work out your salvation.
That's what it means.
He provided all this stuff, but we all want Him to do all the work. I don't know why. I would prefer that too. But we think if we're a real Christian and we're really kept, then all this other stuff that we have struggled just goes away.
Well, and he says in here to present your bodies a living sacrifice. We want to start divorcing things we do with our body from things we feel in our emotions. And really, he's talking about everything.
He is. He's talking about everything.
He follows that up with, don't be transformed into relating to people and the world around you by the way the world says you're supposed to do it. Transform your mind and deal with the people in the world around you in the way He would deal with the people in the world around you.
And it actually says, be transformed. That means that He has done the input,
exactly.
And you have to start accepting that willfully, even if it goes completely opposite to everything you want to do. He's already supplanted the ability for that to happen, or He wouldn't have said it.
You could even say it like, walk in the transformation that He's already made and is making in you.
You could say that.
And it's because we're Americans, and it tends to be, we read this and we go, oh, I've got to be transformed in my mind. Well, that's up to me. All right, here's what I got to do. I got to work. I got to go to church. I got to do this. And if I get all this list right, well, then my mind's going to be transformed. And if it's not transformed, then somehow I'm not doing it.
And you'll start judging others by what you think they should be doing those things, or how they do it relative to how you do it.
It's a different flavor of, well, of course the person wasn't healed when you prayed for them because they didn't have enough faith. Or surely you didn't get the new Maserati that you prayed for because you didn't have enough faith. This is the same flavor of that to go, well, my mind's not renewed because I didn't work hard enough.
Yeah.
That's not the case.
It may be kind of true, but when you're pursuing the Lord to make it part of you, that's a different conversation other than just wearing the guilt and going, okay, well, I'm done.
Well, to touch on what Tim, if you didn't see Tim's sermon from Sunday, go on the Bridge Fellowship's YouTube page and look that up, because this is, to me, a good place to interject house of God versus face of God. To look into the face of God and say, honestly, I'm not transformed. I have all of this stuff. I hate my enemies. I want them to be burned down, and I know that that's not okay. To look into the face of God and seek Him and ask Him to change you is very different than saying, having all of those things also true, and then trying to figure out how in the world you're going to muster within yourself the will and the strength and the ability to change it all, because you can't. So
that's the stuff he's talking about, sacrificing.
Yeah. You sacrifice your ability, and then once we're staring into the face of God and we're walking in the Spirit and the transformation that He's brought us, it's the Spirit that then begins to give us the ability to love people that are unlovely, to be nice to people that are persecuting us, to be kind to them, to give food to the hungry, even though they're our enemy. You know, even things like the Geneva Convention, and you know, we that governs how we treat prisoners of war. I mean, you know that. There's some basics in that are really principles out of Romans 12. And you hear things like, you see it in movies, you hear it from people, it's like, well, we don't treat our prisoners that way because we don't want to sink to their level.
Yeah.
Or we want to be better than that. There's an integrity that's trying to be sought after. Well, that's an eternal type of a thing.
Yes.
And it's not just that, oh, we're better, we're Americans, we don't treat people that way. Well, sometimes we have. But the point is there are eternally true functions of things that reflect the nature of the kingdom. And he's like, one of those is you don't mistreat your enemies. But the purpose is not to exalt yourself and say, look how good I am, I took my beating. That's not what he's saying. He says when you do those things, it heaps hot coals on their head, and it's those hot coals that maybe by chance might bring them to repentance, might bring them to salvation. And the goal of our heart, for me, I have to keep praying, Lord, don't just let me be nice to my enemies because you said to and I want to be right. It's not a terrible idea to start with. But what I really want is like, Lord, really make me love them because I want to
Yeah.
be like you. I
Yeah.
want to reflect your nature. I don't just want to be going through the motions. I want to be doing this for real.
Well, and part of the working there is it's easy to talk and try to describe all this stuff and say, you do this and you'll be walking in the spirit field and all that stuff. Back to that, God orchestrates things around in your life. He's looking to change every there are aspects you don't even know that you have that are having problems that are deep down in there. Yeah. And Satan may try to hide those things. You think, well, you mean Satan can hide things from God? No. What I mean by that is that when in God's time, it's time for you to deal with that issue, he'll bring it back around and you'll feel like, I was great with the Lord over here and now I'm not. What's going on? That's because he's fleshing all that stuff out for you to that's sacrificing that piece again. Or this piece. Now it's another piece. Now it's another piece. You think, well, does this ever end?
No.
Well, you start looking at it different over time, and it's hard to intellectually. You might be able to get that. But
I call it being spiritual Mr. Miyagi'd.
After a while, you kind of start looking forward to the new thing that comes up.
You do.
And that seems really sadistic, but that's not really how it works.
Well, once you learn to, no, let me rephrase that. Once you begin to intentionally learn to listen to the Lord and see what He's doing, because it's a process. We're sitting in prayer Wednesday night, and and I'm hearing myself, and I'm saying things like, there's parts of my walk with the Lord that are just new, and they're developing, and I've been walking with the Lord a long time.
Yep.
And so you get in these places, you look forward to them. It doesn't mean there's not trepidation and there's not a little, okay, this is going to get rocky, but you learn to really enjoy them because that He disciplines those He loves, and that's discipline and punishment are not the same thing. That's not what that means. It means He trains and He develops those whom He loves. That's what it means. He takes the time. One of the examples that the Lord gave me years ago, when Austin was little particularly, we were doing a lot of work around the house, and he always wanted to help, and he was a little guy, and he wanted to run the circular saw. Well, you can't put a 7-year-old or 6-year-old in charge of a circular saw, not without getting arrested. And but he wanted to run it, but I can remember this one particular time, and we clamped the board down, and I put his hands on the saw, and we cut the board, and I'm holding it, with him. I've got my hands on his hands, and it took me 3 times as long to do this stinking little project.
Yeah.
I didn't need his help, but he wanted to help and he wanted to learn, so I showed him how to do the saw. And you do that a half a dozen times, and people they can figure it out. Give it a little while, and they're a little older, and they can do it. And it takes time, but it takes attention, and it's scary. And there's lots of unknowns, and you might even cut it crooked several times. Yeah. But over time, and that's the way I've kind of always seen my walk with him. Sometimes he's just putting his hands on mine. He's like, this is how you do it. Now watch this. And I screw it up, and it's hard.
It's because you're going, when he's got his hands on you, you're going, no, I want to do it like this. And it gets all messed up. And
Or I go, I watched a YouTube video. I know how to do this. I'm good, And he's like, no, let me help you. And that's just kind of how the thing works. And so as you're looking at Romans 12 and you're going through there, it is a good litmus test to see, am I loving my enemies well? Am I loving without hypocrisy? Am I pursuing that which is good and detesting that which is evil? Those are good. If you find yourself, let's flip it, being drawn and having affection for evil things, that's not a good sign.
Yeah.
That means you need to be.
There's an issue in
there's
there.
An issue in there somewhere that needs to come out. If you are literally drawn to, or even not detested by purely evil things, you start explaining them away. There's a problem there, and you just could go down the list, not as a checklist per se, but as a mark of how am I reflecting the nature and the character of God.
Well, and then those things that come like that, if it comes to you or somebody points it out and you get to that, well, I'm just going to keep doing this anyway, talking to yourself, right? That, at that point in time, that's where the Lord has put that in front of you, and He's dealing with you on it, and it's not going to go away.
Nope. Especially if you're his,
Yeah.
because he has an interest in developing his children.
Yes.
We got to wrap up. Next week we'll be in Romans 13. Be in prayer for all the stuff coming up. Like I said, we got the pastors conference next Saturday. We'll actually be setting up on Friday evening and going in and doing that. We got April 23rd Bridge Fellowship men's conference. There will be a form that'll be floating around for registration for that. Doesn't cost you anything, but we will ask you to register through the church. This is a church function. It's not a Matt and Tim function, but we really want to build it up.
But if you're not part of the bridge, you can still come.
Oh yeah. I'm just saying that all the registration, all that's going to be going through the church. But we need to know how many people are coming for lunch. That's the big function, and how many chairs are set out. That's it. So we will see that. Be looking for that. Keep us in prayer. March Madness coming up. Our goal this year is to develop and roll out the training app, and to get on paper, one of the goals we've set out is enough study material sets to equip 200 pastors this year, and that's where we're headed. We're about 50% of the way there. So if you feel like you can partner with us or pray about it, and if you really the big help comes in monthly partnerships, and you can do that on our website. I hate mentioning that all the time, but it does take money to do ministry, and so we always make that plea. If the Lord doesn't lead you, please don't do it. But if He does, we would really appreciate it. There was something else I was going to say something about. What am I missing? We got April 23rd. We got Horse Gate coming up.
Horse Gate.
The
Pastors Conference. Right. That's next Saturday.
Next Saturday. I can't think of anything else off the top of my head, but just be in prayer for the ministry. Again, even if it's if you're watching this and it's after the fact and it's not during the live, go ahead and comment. If you got questions or something hits you, we'll jump on there later and we'll address it. Maybe we'll talk about it next week and that kind of thing. We've had people do that in the past. Or if you've got questions you would like us to answer, drop them in the comments. We'll pick them up and we'll deal with them and address them. Something else came up the last couple of weeks, and I do want to just say this. I didn't even talk to you about this. I want to always be really clear. Twice, I've had people say, hey, I'm not happy with my church. I think I'm just going to tune into y'all's podcast and call it good. That's happened twice. I want to encourage you not to do that. I want to encourage you to check into the podcast all you want, but we are supplemental at best, and that may be even a stretch. But stuff like this, whether it's us or somebody else, throwing stuff out on the internet, it does not take the place of being committed to a local body of believers and submitted to a local body of leadership. Man, you have to have that. So I just want to encourage you to pour into the place of fellowship where you are, and let those people lead you and let them guide you and pour into them, and tune into us for extra stuff and surrounding yourself, but don't let this be all you do. It amazed me that's been said twice, and I'm like, man, if this is the bar, you need to raise your bar. Well,
that's you trying to get yourself ministered to, and there's nothing wrong with that.
But
you need to get in with a body of believers somewhere to minister to them.
Yeah,
and that doesn't mean standing up in the front doing it or being the leader or whatever.
Get in there and serve
you
somebody.
Just need to get in there, and if all it is shaking their hand and saying, hey, it's good to see you, you need to start letting it pour out.
Yeah. And then you'll find out that once you do that, you'll be surprised how much gets poured in.
Yeah.
All right. I think that's all we got. I'm glad y'all joined us today. Hope you come back next week. Don't forget March Madness, April 23rd is coming out. You'll see a lot more of that coming up. Watch our social media, get on YouTube, subscribe, do all the things. Y'all know the things. I'm not a social media guru. You are. So get out there and do all the things. We love you. We appreciate you. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.